Here's an explanation of why the U.S. said they voted no. Here it is.
We regret that the United States must once again remind this body that the United Nations exists to maintain international peace and security. It was not founded to advance narrow, specific interests and agendas, to establish niche international days, or to create new costly meeting and reporting mandates. We do not accept this resolution's assertion that historical facts from the 15th through 19th century constitute violations of jus cogens, as the term is understood in contemporary international law. The United States also does not recognize a legal right to reparations for historical wrongs that were not illegal under international law at the time they occurred. Also, there are some fake news articles suggesting that the sponsors of this resolution called into question President Trump's support of the Black community. We reject any such suggestions. Indeed, President Trump has done more for Black Americans than any other president and enjoyed historic support from the Black community in the 2024 election. He is working tirelessly to deliver for them and make our country greater than ever.
What's going on, YouTube? I'm just here to talk about what you guys already know. And this is the stuff, I constantly, probably to the death of me, guys. I'm always going to, at least, if I'm not thinking about it, if I'm not talking about it, I'm at least thinking about it. But this is exactly why being flexible and having options in just the world, right, and thinking more globally is how I and my family must move. It's not wanting to move, right? For any sort of success to further come to us, right, and to extend the longevity of our life, right, we have to understand, who we are. We are from America, and we are of Black descent, right? African, which is, it's a continent, right? But you guys know what I'm saying. African, Haitian, right? Jamaican, right? We're descent of darker skin tone, guys. I mean, that's just it. And all the imbalances of the world that comes against us, right? All these, British colonies that came and colonized places that our ancestors, basically grew up in, right? So it's insane like that. That's just my thinking. And, I'm not trying to be an extremist, a radical. I'm not going to try to join the Brothers of Hebrew and, stuff like that. But we really got to think that life ain't just this sweet. Like, stuff is just going to get handed to us, because it's not, And so you guys, you've heard about, the whole voting, 204, the acknowledgement. At least I'll say acknowledgement. Nobody's really going to reprimand anything. Nobody's going to give us a remittance of anything, but at least the acknowledgement that the slave trade and the historic slavery, the institution of the historic slavery, right, within those 400, 500 years, especially to the Black, Americans. Nowadays, we're Black Americans, would be recognized as the most astonishing, kind of event, from a human to human perspective on the globe, right? For some reason, the UN nations wanted to bring this up. I didn't look into that, but if you guys are watching this, let me know in the comments why this has been brought up now in 2026, or at least in 2025, right? However, you guys heard the result that over the, and I'll put it somewhere right here, and also the article that I read in the description, you heard that basically Argentina, Israel, and the United States voted against it. The other 130 plus countries voted to, acknowledge and promote or defend the right for reprimands against us or the ancestors who birthed us, right, to be reprimanded in any shape, way, form, or fashion. UK and the 20 plus countries within Europe abstained from it. And, they have their own thing, they had their own thing saying, I would assume, guys, that people from that part of the world, right, Europe, UK, things like that, have their own thinking on how their people were treated. There's always going to be a group who wants to, you know, abstain from something, especially when obviously they're your allies, right? I mean, you got to think about it. So anyway, I think it's crazy that more proof is in the pudding. It just keeps coming out. Like, you know, you could just live day to day in America being a black American and you see where it gets you, right? Especially if you're not on your toes and if you're not one of those people who are trying to maneuver past the minutia. Like, you see where it gets you. You see what you're caught up in being quote unquote black, right? And the fact that we're called black when most of us are really brown, it's all insanity to me. You know, this is really why I wanted to leave the States, guys. I'm telling y'all, you know, and it's just further proof. It's just further proof that it's not going to get better. In fact, it may get worse because now they're spitting in our faces, right? The U.S. was birthed on our backs. And now we're getting spat in the face. Even after the abolishment of slavery, there's still radical judicial prejudice and shit happening. We're still getting spat in the face. No, the U.S., everybody, these leaders, right? You know, these subordinates of our forefathers and shit, they're like, nah, we're cool on that. We're not going to do that. You know, we're not going to acknowledge that we shat the bed. No, they're like, maybe, you know, what Adolf Hitler did was worse. That's probably what they're thinking, honestly. I mean, it's a game. I'm telling y'all, life is a game when you really start reading through the stuff. Because people are just going to just, like, speed through this thing, and we're going to forget about it, because it's what people do. We're desensitized being in the States. We're desensitized being in America. Because at the end of the day, why cut off the hand that feeds you, right? You know, so it's crazy. It's crazy. Although this passed, right? Because it was, what, 153-3? Some shit like that. Like, it doesn't really matter. Is the U.S., like, after slavery, right? After, what, 1860 or whatever? Like, you know, we still were supposed to get 40 acres and a mule. Some bullshit that people just come up with, you know? And now they're like, okay, well, even though the U.S. disagreed, although they're on the forefront on why today we're going through the stuff we're going through, right? Because power is influence, and that's just what it is. They have the influence and they have the power, you know? And evil runs the world, guys. That's just, no matter where you're at in the world, that's just how it is, you know? They're still talking about reprimands. Like, hey, nobody's going to reprimand us. That's not happening. The U.S. can't even afford to do that. The U.S. can't even afford to look over, you know, the people who look like them, you know, if they're not in the 1%, 2%, or maybe 5%, which is going to be maybe like our entertainers and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no reprimands happening. It's not happening. I just want to call out that to be in a system continually where it shits on you, where you are handcuffed just by being born. Like, the world is already sick, and now you're of darker skin tone, or you're born in a situation or an environment where the people around you, right, are negatively influencing you, and you're too young or unresourced to get yourself out, you know? And by the time you get yourself out, you're either old, you're either desensitized to stuff, you're in a systematic Stockholm, you know, oppressed mindset where you feel like you're stuck even though you're not. Like, all this stuff happens, you know what I'm saying? And this is why. Because people just keep shitting on us, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, you gotta take control of your life somehow, some way. And I know people going to the extreme about, you know, doing drugs or getting into drugs and getting into illegal stuff and illegal trades and doing all this stuff, guys. I mean, it takes work, it takes sacrifice, it takes isolation, and it takes decades. It takes decades. I know I'm not gonna get to where I wanna get to for years, but it has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere. And people that you work with, people that you live next to, people in your family, right? No matter the skin tone or the ethnic background, they're not gonna understand your plight, or they're not gonna understand your fire like you will, you know? It's just, like, it gotta hit home somehow. And this is just further proof that they don't give a damn. They don't give a damn unless you curtail to them, you know? And that's playing the game, you know? If you want to, go up the corporate ladder, which I'm going to make a separate video about that. If you want to go up the corporate ladder because you know how much money you need to make to sustain yourself in America or to find a way to pivot, then you got to play the game. But there comes a time where you got to pivot, or it's going to destroy you, at least mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and then it'll manifest physically, because we are black. We are of black whatever, right? We do not look like the role models or the leaders in our local, community, definitely not the federal and the government, environment. Like, I don't look like them. I'm not represented by any of them. I don't care, So anyway, I'm not gonna make this long. You guys already seen what's going on, the writing on the wall. I mean, it's not even writing, it's just bludgeoned paint. It's all over the place. So I don't know. All I'm doing is spreading awareness, and this further just motivates me, and I stand on my 2 feet knowing the decision I made is solid, and we're just gonna keep maneuvering and make this happen, But the US, they don't care about us, man. The first people to go is gonna be us, I promise y'all.